this. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Gwanson, and I am with KCIT. Today, we are doing the KCIT Spotlight, where we spotlight the amazing work that our volunteers are doing in your community. Today, I have the distinct pleasure to be here with Tammi Burke. Hi, Tammi.
Hi, Rebecca.
And I'm thinking, let's just jump right in. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and the work that you're doing now?
Okay. So I am the manager of prevention and community services at Victims Resource Center. I've been at the agency this September will be 33 years. So I do love the work that I do. And what we do at our agency is we work with victims of crime, all crimes. So when I first started, I was a counselor advocate. I did a lot of individual counseling support groups. As time went on, I became a supervisor of the 3 counties that we work in, Luzerne, Wyoming, and Carbon. But I still continue to do clients. And a few years ago, maybe 2017, I took a position to become the manager of community services. And what that really meant is that I went out to make sure that the community was aware of our agency so they had access to services, but also to provide training so like law enforcement and medical on the importance of screening for different things, for sexual assault, domestic violence, traumatic brain injury. But all through that, I've continued to keep clients, because that's the best part of the work that we do. I work a lot with homicide, and probably the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of it has been about human trafficking, mainly sex trafficking.
It's intense. And, that importance of still doing the direct service work. I hear that from you. I think that's really beautiful. So in all that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that part of that is like, how do you do the work if you're not, how can I tell you, what's important to victims if I'm not working with them? That's really how I feel about it. You get out of the loop when you're not still doing that. And it's hard to mentor,
I agree. I think that boots on the ground piece of it is so vital. And speaking of boots on the ground and being in it, what brought you to KCIT? How long have you been with KCIT? Could you talk a little bit about the KCIT experience?
Yes, I've been with KCIT since 2015, but I was aware of KCIT long before that. My executive director and the clinical director were part of KCIT, and I knew the marvelous work they were doing, but I had 2 children at home, so I couldn't just pick up. I actually waited until the kids were big enough that it wouldn't matter if I had to leave the house to go somewhere overnight. But I just knew the amazing work because of confidentiality. They couldn't come back and tell us everything, but I know they were a big part of 9/11. And I'm not surely exactly what they did, but I know they were on the ground, working with victims. And what an amazing, opportunity for them to work with those victims and for those victims to have somebody there to walk them through all those different stages and processes they had to go through. Absolutely. And the support they received.
Absolutely. Yeah. When you think back on your time with KCIT, are there any moments that stand out for you that you would like to talk about?
I know, like when I first started, even just doing the presentation, being the facilitator, I would be real anxious. But like once we started and you realized how important it was to do, then during COVID, things changed and we weren't able to go to the places that we were at. And then they wanted to do things that went virtually. And I'm like, how are we going to do that?
Right.
How are we going to do that? So they had a group come together and we would work about how we all had the opportunity to have input on what we thought needed to be done for the process. And it worked. I believe I was probably one of the first groups that they did virtually. I was part of, and I facilitated it, and it worked. But I didn't think that it would work when we were, it's not the same. In person is way better, but we still needed to continue to do that because people continue to be impacted by trauma.
Yeah. And during that time when we were talking about the pivot to virtual, the input from volunteers was really important on walking through each piece of it, this process, our GCI process that had not been done virtually, and thinking about how do we still provide this service, because it wasn't that, it wasn't needed anymore. It was just how we can roll it out. So thank you so much for being a part of it and for being one of the first people to do it too. It's like, pretty great. What would you say to the questions, why KCIT? Why take a training? Why become trauma informed?
for me personally, is that I want to make a difference. I think that if you join KCIT, there's no way that you don't make a difference. You have the opportunity to pick and choose kind of where you go. You get to meet some fabulous people from across the state. I've gone to some incredible trainings that KCIT has put on, but trauma informed, I think that when we think about trauma informed, many people go right to violence, some form of violence that happened. But every day, every one of us can be impacted by trauma. There's nobody that we don't know that's has not been impacted by trauma. That could be being in a car accident, watching a loved one die, your house burning down, a grandparent dying. We are constantly, people who are traumatized. And we think about the world today and all the changes that have happened from COVID, the violence that has kind of increased and how it impacts us. And even though people aren't there in those communities, when there's been all the, the mass shootings or whatever, we're still as a community impacted by that. So every day people are traumatized by the, mainly by the world. And so I think that if I can make a difference in that, and if you could make a difference in that, that's the important piece, is that we just need to take the time, because it does matter. And we may not see the work that we're doing today is impacting, but it is. I know every day the work that we do at our agency impacts, even though we're not always given feedback, and it's the same thing for KCIT. We might not ever get to know what mattered to somebody or the words that we said that changed something in somebody's, life. But we continue to do that because we know that it does matter, that it makes a difference.
Absolutely. We know the reverberation of that care continues on.
Right.
Sometimes I think of it as a vibration. Sometimes I think of it as a seed that grows, but you're absolutely right with that. And I know that KCIT is really grateful to have you as a team member and for the years of service that you have given to lots of different communities, not just your own, but communities across Pennsylvania. In closing, I like to ask volunteers if there is a fun fact you would like to share about yourself.
I really like music, mostly country music. I like dancing. I like karaoke. It's a distressor. You know what I mean? I can even clean the house just listening to music. That kind of makes time go by. And, sometimes even when I'm leaving work on a hard day, I'll pull up the radio and it kind of takes me away. So it's probably why I like it. But
that's a great fun fact. And that's also a really great tool, a resource. Yes. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Tammi. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Rebecca. Thanks. And thank you for taking the time to talk to me.